Hello, hello, and welcome to episode 70 of the Great Canadian Hockey Podcast. I'm James Parisi here with my co-host Aiden Sarah, and it feels like hockey's happening, but it also feels kind of dull. Like it's quite November-ish, if I do say so myself. I'm feeling November-y. Aiden's nodding, and it seems he's feeling November-y. When I say November-y, I mean I'm listening to slower music. I'm cooking more. I'm back to drinking tea. I'm taking naps routinely. I don't know if you guys are feeling the same, but I like to think it's not a seasonal depression. It's a seasonal regression. But enough of my rambling. My co-host, Aiden Sarah, how are we doing, fella? How's life? What's new?
This isn't like an indictment on you at all. This is just maybe a personal, my personal way of using and interpreting words. I feel like I would rather just be honest with somebody and tell them like, oh no, man, I'm just depressed than telling them that I'm like regressing. That seems like, like I feel I would feel more disappointed with myself if I'm like looking in the mirror and being like, wow, I've regressed like crazy. Like depressed to me is just, yeah, okay, that's like half your week right there. But regressing makes it seem like your skills are depleting. I don't know, maybe it's just me. When I heard that word, I'm like, that sounds harsh.
It's more like a regression to the mean because, like, getting back to the average, the normal, because in the summer, you're so jacked up and you can do anything. Like, who the hell wants to go for a hike for 70% of the year? But in the summer, you're like, yeah, you know what? Let's do it. Why not? And this is just tapering back down to normal, to average. Oh, wait, I gotta ask. I don't think you guys are getting this, but as we're recording on the evening of Tuesday, November 19th, BC is getting hit with what they're calling a bomb cyclone. And I hear air whistling up my building's elevator shaft, and I can see every tree within, I shouldn't say within anything. I can see every tree for very far moving, very far. Are you seeing anything like this? You get any inclement weather at all?
No, I mean it hadn't been snowing and a bunch dumped on Calgary earlier this week, which is just in time for me to go spend all weekend in Calgary starting on Thursday, which is great.
Nice.
But other than that, like even in Red Deer here, like I haven't really had maybe 2 days of light snow, and that's kind of it in the last couple of weeks. So that
Wait,
has been
before I forget, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I'm going to forget to do this. Uh, I encountered snow this past weekend.
well, that's kind of what I was saying. I had heard from my other Vancouver area acquaintances and friends that you guys have had quite the weekend, and now of course into this week of weather so far.
Oh, I haven't encountered it in Vancouver. I went to Whistler this past weekend.
Okay, because I had people I knew in like Abbotsford, Chilliwack who said that they had to face some snow. But
Yeah.
obviously you're gonna see it in Whistler. Yeah, so how was Whistler?
So I drove up there, like Saturday around noon, just shy of a 2 hour drive. About halfway up, it starts pissing rain, just ridiculous amounts of rain. And I'm thinking, well, if I'm in Squamish and it's this rainy, when I gain some altitude in Whistler, that's not going to be rain. So I go up there, I visit a couple friends, and we go to get in my car to go get some stuff to make dinner, and complete whiteout, just complete whiteout. And I drive like an Infinity Q60, which is like a little flashy little sports car kind of thing. And so naturally, everyone immediately thinks, oh my God, he's toast. But my car's all-wheel drive and has snow tires, so I'm okay-ish.
Woo!
Yeah.
I wouldn't have
Yeah.
had that on my bingo card. Good job.
No, no, you wouldn't. But yeah, that weekend was hilarious because I learned the definition of swanning about, um, which is just exactly what it sounds like when people just go for a walk and just look up at the sky and pretty much just exist. You don't really have an objective. You're just swanning about. And I made some dumplings from scratch. Those were absolutely deadly. Well, I don't know. I poured the wine. Does that count? I poured the
I'll,
wine and helped cut up ingredients.
yeah, I mean, if you contributed to dumplings being made from scratch, then I'm giving it to you. Yeah, like yeah.
Okay. And
If
then the
it,
most interesting part of the evening, um, me and a friend and a bunch of their friends had a massive party in the back of a ski shop. Yeah.
I I wonder how much that happens up there, where it's like if you live there, do you know which ski shops are like the party ski shops?
Yeah, and like, is it always the same one or is it rotating?
Yeah, that's another good question.
Yeah, and I will plead the fifth on answering which ski shop because I don't really like costing people jobs, even though I doubt anyone connected would be hearing this, but you never know, right? But yeah, and then on my way down, I remembered how much I hate driving back from Whistler. It's just so much change in elevation, just like I don't like driving the Coca-Cola home. It's just so much downward.
I was gonna say that is a you specific problem though, because the
Mhm.
reputation of the drive from Whistler to Vancouver is a very scenic and pleasant one.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's a state of mind thing at the time. Usually I'm a little bit tired from my weekending in Whistler. And you know what? I decided while I was up there that I am actually going to go skiing more than once this year. That's an objective. That's something I've decided and learned, I guess. Um, yeah, other than that, I don't think much of anything is new, but yeah, shall we dive into hockey? I feel like we've got some newsy stuff.
How good are you at skiing? We had this conversation somewhat recently, and I remember like you having a bad story about being in a spot you shouldn't have
Okay,
been.
you know what? Yeah, yeah, let's give the listeners an angle of my skiing expertise. I've been once. And
Okay, okay.
I had been snowboarding probably three times as like an early teenager, but I've been skiing once. It was last year, and I went with a buddy and his girlfriend. The buddy was fairly amateur, but the girlfriend had been skiing her whole life, and she said, "Yeah, I'll teach you." So we go get our rentals, we go get all set up, geared up, everything. And then I'm like, "Wait, why are we going to the top of the mountain?" She's like, "Oh yeah, I'll just show you up there." And we get to the top, and she shows me how to turn and how to slow down. And she says, "Okay, see ya." So it was a couple hours and a lot of tumbles. But by the end, aside from the exhaustion and pain from learning by being thrown into the fire as a mid-20s adult with a history of knee and ankle injuries, Um, I I think I kind of sort of know how to do it now. So I think if I go less exhausted and better prepared, I think I'll actually be able to figure it out and have fun doing it in like a chill way. You know?
Okay. Well, I have a decent little bit of time around Christmas at home, and
I'm down.
yeah, it sounds like that might be a good plan. I'm pretty sure I've told you this. We're coming up on like 4 years ago now. I absolutely just like crashed to end all crashes on a mountain skiing. Bad concussion. Like I was out cold for a bit on the on the ice and the snow. Like it
I
was a
know of a
mess.
guy whose arm fell off and he blew up an artery from snowboarding.
Yeah, that was not quite, but it was bad enough that I think I've only actually gone twice since then because it just
Mm,
completely and that was like at that time I was maybe going like up to 7 or 8 times a year at least over like the last 3 or 4 years before that. So
right.
I'm a little bit overdue to get back into it. And if I'm with you, it'll be the caution of not wanting to kill you mixed with like the regular caution I'm gonna have
Oh,
from
it'll
getting
be
back
so
into
chill.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
We won't be doing anything difficult whatsoever. And if we do, I will be sitting down and sliding down the hill.
Yeah, well, and the injury, I'll be very like okay to admit that the injury entirely was born out of like a little bit of bad luck and then a lot of arrogance and overconfidence I shouldn't have had. Like, um, but yeah, that can be part of the Christmas plans. Um, James, I don't know if I would have sent it to you, but I was watching Columbus Boston
I know
yesterday,
exactly where you're going with this.
and I said Jim Montgomery's getting fired tomorrow, and then I woke up to Jim Montgomery getting fired. I guess you really don't. I don't think you're really able to come back from getting booed off the ice at home after losing to Columbus. Hey, like that. That was tough. That was tough. Did you watch any hockey last night in general?
Um, I'm gonna be fully transparent. I haven't watched more than a period of any game since we recorded last.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Yeah.
I've been somewhat on the other side because two
I've
weekends
basically
ago,
been working, napping, and driving.
yeah, 2 weekends ago I was crazy busy in Calgary for work, and then I didn't have anything last weekend. So last weekend was just hockey, and that continued into both Monday and today. Vancouver just tied it up against the Rangers 3-3. But like first period of play, man, it was Voronkov scored, and it's like okay, and then Matthew Olivier scored shorthanded, and that was the one that hurt for Boston, the shorthanded goal in the first period. Then JVR scored late in the period, and like the TD Garden, man, you don't really feel it that like devoid of energy very often, right? Like
Mhm.
those Bruins fans know how to show up and at least make some noise. It's kind of like Montreal. And they did eventually make the noise at the end when they booed the team off the ice. I've said it, I'll continue to say it. Whoever gets Jim Montgomery next is going to be very, very lucky. His record as a head coach in Boston actually speaks for himself. Like, yeah, he's 8, 9, and 2, I think. But he's won, I think, like the number of regulation losses he has, I think is less than one third the number of wins he has in regular season play. Like I this kind of gives me, I might have said it last week that them giving up on Montgomery was gonna kind of remind me a little bit of when they gave up on Bruce Cassidy and then he won the cup in Vegas right away. Um, I don't know who it's gonna be. Maybe it's Detroit. But whoever Montgomery goes next, I think, yeah, that team's going to be lucky. What's next for Montgomery? What's next for Boston? What do you think?
Well, I think we should definitely explain that Boston is turning the page and naming Joe Sacco interim coach. He was serving as associate coach with the team this year. He was an assistant coach with the team the year prior. He has been a head coach in the past. I am familiar with him as a former Colorado Avalanche head coach from, I want to say, the 10-11 or 11-12 season. I don't think he was coached for more than a couple of years, and I don't really remember him meshing well with the team, but it was a lot of young, inexperienced guys, and he was new to being head coach as well at the time, I believe. And his name would pop up here and there as an assistant coach. There are people within the organization, apparently, that always viewed him as the next coach in Boston. That has apparently been a thing for quite some time. So I am recycling that information from other sources that I've read online and heard on other podcasts. This is not my own sourced information, but it is from all reputable sources. But it seems he's a guy that they were confident in having there, and I think that's why it was easier to let Montgomery go. Whereas, I think a handful of teams out there would have let this play out.
Yeah, I agree.
What's next? What's next for Montgomery, though? Honestly, I don't know. There could be a vacancy in Nashville soon.
Yeah, I mean Barry Trotz and Andrew Brunette, that relationship I don't think is gonna fall apart before it has to, and by have to I mean is somebody above Trotz gonna kind of be like, yeah, we need to do this. Sorry. That would kind of be the scenario I see playing out. I was kind of thinking, yeah, I was thinking Detroit. I was sort of thinking maybe Pittsburgh. Obviously, Mike Sullivan's been there forever. they it might just be Sullivan's leaving because it's time, right? Not because he's, not doing as good a job as he can with the group that has been given to him, right? Like I don't think he's the reason Pittsburgh are struggling, but again, that just might be part of the business kind of thing, right? With Sullivan moving on. The question I don't know the answer to is, do you think Montgomery's going to want to take over a Pittsburgh Penguins team right now? I think the opportunity to coach Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin, like anybody would be quite interested in that. Like that itself would be an allure. But if you ask me, it's hard to imagine anybody going to Pittsburgh right now and turning the ship around to the extent that it needs to be for them to have some relative success. So I don't know for sure with Montgomery, Pittsburgh and Detroit were the two in front of my mind, but it does make sense as well to see him at some other destinations.
Well, regardless of his next destination, man, I can't talk today. Destination? What is that? Regardless of his next destination, I do really want to give props to Jim Montgomery though, because this is a guy who worked his way from not being in the NHL anymore. He was unceremoniously dismissed from Dallas. I believe something to do with alcohol. Is that correct?
I don't know specifically if it was alcohol. It was a dismissal that was a sudden dismissal. I Personal behavior
Ah,
issue was like the
yes, he
the the
went to
way it was.
rehab for what admitted was a drinking problem.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. Because at the time it was reported as like, oh, it was a personal behavior issue, but that was like the Elliot Friedman report. I think I remember being like,
Yeah, yeah. The initial quote was that he was dismissed due to unprofessional conduct inconsistent with the core values and beliefs of the Dallas Stars. But then later on, it came out and about everything that was going on. I think after like 90 days sober, he came out and talked about everything. But yeah, regardless of everything, it's just it's inspirational story that he was able to work his way back to coaching in the greatest hockey league on the planet and do a damn good job at times. That team accomplished a lot given it was regular season. It's still nothing to shake a stick at. They have their name in the NHL record book, do they not?
yeah, regular season, best regular season. They beat the record that I think Tampa had just set like 2 years, 3 years prior
Yeah,
to that.
yeah. So you set a record. Like, take that one and run with it. Obviously, there's another goal to reach, and hopefully he can reach that with the next team he's with. But time to move on. Man, it feels like so much of our news is downer news. Robert Thomas is back from injury. That's kind of why I'm putting this one first. Um, Plays 23 minutes in his return, clocks an assist. The Blues are looking solid most nights. Like they fight even in games they lose. And Robbie Tommy is going to be given all the runway that he needs to make this Team Canada for Four Nations face-off. Do you think that anything is really going to hold him back now that he's back from injury?
No, it will just literally be like the the decision makers having seen a bigger sample size of the guys like Nick Suzuki, Mark Scheifele. I actually really like the way Bo Horvat's played this season with the Islanders. Again, this is I found myself somehow for like again, it's just random what games I'm turning on, and I've watched the last like at least 6 or 7 Islanders games, and he's really buzzing around. But the way he's playing in New York, I would kind of think more suits a spot higher up in that lineup, which he's just not going to get. Thomas's game is more adaptable, in my opinion, to play the fourth line center spot. Um, to me, it's literally like who is the final decision going to be made by somebody who's going to prefer Nick Suzuki or prefer Robert Thomas in that fourth line center spot? I actually like maybe that's just a little bit of overconfidence on my end, thinking that it's got to be between those two guys. But I'm looking at the way this roster is broken down, and that's the two most logical pieces to be in that position for me. So
What
again,
about a guy who's played better than both of them this year, and he was a gold medalist on the last NHL player having Olympic team?
are you talking about Tavares?
Talking about Matt Duchene.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, that is an interesting one. Again, rules, right? Like Matt
Duchesne
Duchesne,
can play anywhere in your lineup.
he can. No, I know. Um, not he was World Cup of Hockey, right? Not Olympics, but
Are you sure?
I think so. I think so.
Are you sure he wasn't on the 2014 Olympic team?
No, that's why I said Tavares because I was kind of like, who is even in the NHL still of that team that isn't Crosby or Doughty? No, Duchesne. I mean, Duchesne in Dallas this season like continues to be maybe the biggest bargain contract in the league. Um, I don't know about him being in that spot, James, but I like on my team Canada, I had Connor Bedard on the third line as a
Yeah,
winger.
Duchesne gold medalist in Sochi 2014.
Nice, good for him. But I had Bedard third line left wing. I had Lafreniere on the left wing of the fourth line. And realistically, like that's that's two spots that you could throw him in. So I'm not gonna say no shot, but like it's again, it's gonna be who's picking the team, what spot do they fill, and who do they think is going to mesh well with the players that they're pegging to be in those positions too. That's
Totally.
part of the reason why like even Carter Verhaeghe hasn't had a good year, but I think about Verhaeghe playing with a teammate in Reinhardt and McDavid, and I think, okay, that's about as good of as of an offensive line as they can build there. Um, yeah, and Thomas was skating well today. Like he was playing a little bit on the defensive side. I don't think was playing with Jordan Kyrou, whose line was playing pretty well offensively. Um, yeah, they were just beaten. It looked like a better Minnesota team today. Um, James, I had much like for some reason I've been watching Islanders hockey. I'd been watching a lot of Washington Capitals hockey for a very specific reason. Which means last
Because
night
Ovechkin had a hat trick and then a 2 goal game in the last two
yeah,
games.
yeah, and I was watching both of those games and I was so like ready to watch him complete the hat trick last night, and then he got hurt. And that just absolutely ripped my
He
heart
was
out of my
gonna do it
chest.
too.
Yeah. Oh man. So he gets stuck on 15 goals, which is that 27 away?
I believe 27 or 28. I don't recall.
Yeah. Um, so he's stuck there for now, week to week with a leg injury. You know what, James? It's November 19th. Did you expect Robert Thomas to be back November 19th?
No.
No. Do we expect Connor McDavid to miss what, like 4 games with that leg injury that looked bad? No.
Yes, but just because he's a mutant.
Sure. So again, this week to week, again, we've seen injuries be somewhat consistently overreported this year. So fingers crossed that it's sooner than later for Ovechkin. Um,
Hey, and week to week's not bad, especially this time of year. Like realistically, Ovi always finishes really strong.
we'll see how Washington do as well because he's playing awesome. He's obviously scoring, but they're first in the Metro. Like
Yeah.
guys, and they're playing good hockey. Dylan Strome is at the end of the day, guys, this is kind of what I mean about not calling guys draft busts. It's 10 years after Dylan Strome was taken third overall, and he's officially this season playing up to what his potential was, right?
Yeah.
Like it can happen kind of just like that. I think he deserves a lot of credit. He's played really well. And again, I was talking about Jim Montgomery, the other coach that I'm going to constantly take the opportunity to praise because I think he's done an amazing job. Spencer Carberry in Washington. He's getting the best out of that group consistently, night in, night out. He did last year. They weren't in first, but I thought them making the playoffs was a feat for that coach and for that team. And he's one upped himself already so far this year.
Okay, for those who don't know, Dylan Strome plus 18 and 28 points in 18 games. Ovechkin plus 15 and 25 points in 18 games. Connor McMichael plus 10 and 19 points in 18 games. Alexi Protas plus 12 and 18 points in 18 games.
Brodus, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Whoever took a flyer on him in fantasy this year, props. Kudos. Nice work. I don't know who in our league did it, but I know someone added him in free agency. And I remember thinking, huh, dope. That is pretty cool. I remember thinking that will have nothing on my Andrew Mangiapane. And as of right now, Andrew Mangiapane has 8 points in 18 games.
Yeah, he scored a nice shorty a couple games ago. quickly, James, because again, I've watched them play twice in the last 30 hours now, I guess. I'll actually put the baton in your hand just to start things off. Edmonton Oilers 2024-25. Give me your 2 cents on this team. What's going on and what they can be.
Well, when we looked at this team on paper before the season, I remember thinking, wow, that's a lot of cool stuff that I don't think's gonna work. Now, I have no idea why Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is struggling so much. He has 9 points in 20 games and he's a -3. He's been playing strong minutes in a strong role night in, night out. I think there was one game maybe he was demoted. Like, not really anything that should be that telling. Leon Draisaitl has been unstoppable. McDavid's been fantastic whenever healthy, aside from like a couple games earlier this year that I didn't really love from him. Um, and Stuart Skinner is again making people concerned very often. Now, the defense is still the defense. We know that Edmonton's defense is just kind of like, like, okay. Ekholm, great. Bouchard, great. That's the end of the conversation. We've had this conversation so many times, Aiden. And like, I just don't understand why it feels like this team needs a kick in their nether regions in the form of a coach firing every time that they're not playing up to their potential. Because you're not going to move a massive piece. You're not. And there's no help coming from the waiver wire. There's no help coming from these small little maneuver trades. And your free agent acquisitions aren't doing it. So what's the answer going to be? It's going to end up being a coach firing again. It's going to happen at some point this season, probably. Why is that what needs to happen for this group? That's my 2 cents.
It's a good question. That's a very
Is it
good
a
question.
correct
And
question? Am I in the right boat here?
no, I like it. I like it a lot. You're talking about that defense. Listen, uh, I so badly, like I'm such a big Canadian hockey fan. Because he plays for Edmonton and because he's Canadian, I want Evan Bouchard to be good, man. I do badly. Like he the last 3 games, this 3 game Eastern Canadian road trip, he was absolutely abhorrent against Toronto. He was not good against Montreal, and then he went out today and he had an amazing game against the Ottawa Senators. But again, when I think back to what he did wrong against Toronto and Montreal, it was in his own zone and it was defensively. And I think about what he did so well today against Ottawa. He was strong on the puck, he was confident, he was good in the offensive zone, but it wasn't really about him playing defense again. He got absolutely torched by Michael Amadio for a breakaway that Amadio hit the post on. Like, my big thing for Edmonton right now is the fact that like they almost are I'm all I can see them barreling James towards making the same mistake again because Evan Bouchard is a he's got a contract coming up. They just paid Darnell Nurse I think nine and a half, $9.25 million because of a particularly strong season he had offensively, ignoring the fact that like he's good physically defensively, right? Like he
Yeah,
can
he was
throw
a
body
monster that
checks.
year. That year, he looked like the whole package.
Yeah, but the concerns were still there with his to me it's his ability to defend with his stick that just sometimes he just can't maneuver properly when the puck's down in his feet. He can't handle it properly. Um But they're about to do the same thing with Evan Bouchard. And I'm looking at this defense right now, and you've got Matthias Ekholm, Evan Bouchard, Darnell Nurse, Brett Kulak, Troy Stetcher, Travis Dermott, Ty Emberson. Like, this is a group that realistically, to me, you are just missing one, right? But the investments these teams like this team has made in just uh, things that are actively hurting or not helping them. And I'm not just talking about like the overpay on Nurse. I'm talking about the cap penalty they're still having hit on them from the Jack Campbell buyout. Like it is. I think you're exactly right when you say, why does it feel like it needs to be a coach firing? I'm not sure how much I'm like, yeah, that would solve things as much as I'm more sitting here saying they've kind of backed themselves into a corner where that's the only bullet they've got, right? Like you're right about the fact that like they just added Kasperi Kapanen on waivers, and don't get me wrong, okay? I actually think that was kind of perfect for what they're missing right now in their secondary scoring because that team outside of their centerman really the speed of play is just not there. And that's going to happen when you've got guys like Corey Perry in there, right? Nothing against Corey Perry, but age is age, right? Time is time. It's going to happen. I like the play of Vasily Podkolzin a lot this year. I thought he played really well today, especially. He's not the fastest player in the world, right? Like you go up and down this lineup, and aside from Matthias Janmark, you don't have any of these guys that are fleet of foot. Their penalty kill going into today's game, 67%.
Oh,
What?
you.
What? Right? And so Kapanen is going to help them on that because he's just an absolute like boot
Water bug?
fly. Yeah, just all over the place in the PK. He skates really well. So as much as yeah, it's a small thing, I do think it'll help. It addresses a couple somewhat significant needs, but in terms of like moves that moves that are going to make a significant impact, you're right that it doesn't seem like they have much in the tank. So really right now it's I don't want to see Connor McDavid not win, right? And again, much in the same way that I'm sitting here saying don't call young players busts out of the draft for however many years because it could happen. Like, it took Alexander Ovechkin 13 years,
Yep.
but it's frustrating to see this version of Connor McDavid that won the Conn Smythe Trophy last year as a losing finalist only now just be continuously held back more. It sucks.
Yeah, I mean, Steve Stamkos.
Yeah, him too, for sure. It was 12 for him.
He, uh, yeah. Yeah, his rookie season was 0809.
Yeah. So 1920 was the first. So yeah, it's obviously, it's not because they suck, he's never gonna win, but it's definitely disappointing that they cannot figure out enough around him to at this point even be in a playoff spot. And they did win today, and that's good because they lost to Toronto and Montreal on this 3-game trip. They've got Minnesota and the Rangers at home this week, so no guarantee that those are going to be easy results either.
Definitely. I mean, I'd like to see a turnaround, but I also do enjoy chaos. So I think, regardless of result, I'll enjoy watching this storyline. Because when they go really bad, then interesting things might happen. Then we might have more to talk about. I think we like that, don't we?
Obviously, we do.
Yeah.
That's what
Okay.
keeps us going here. We were talking about the injury to Ovechkin and the hopefulness that his timeline would be a sooner rather than later type thing. Speaking of sooner rather than later returnees, Macklin Celebrini has looked very, very good since he returned from injury. Last night, overtime winner for Celebrini, his fourth of the season already in just 8 games, which again, I will remind you, I love to do these 82 game paces. 41 goals over 82 games right now is Macklin Celebrini's pace when he's been scoring. But confident play, took the puck away from Patrick Kane, or drove wide on Alex DeBrincat and finished off past Cam Talbot. Smart little goal in overtime for Celebrini. How much of this guy have you managed to watch? Because what I've seen has been a guy that looks definitely not 18. That's what strikes me. Well, that's what hits me every time I see him. Is this is a guy playing with the poison confidence of a guy in his prime right now.
Man, your 3/4 of a prime Jonathan Taves comparison was pretty good.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, you can't just say someone is prime Jonathan Taves. That dude
Mhm.
was a different duck. Like, that
Mhm.
was That was an animal of a human being on skates. And obviously Macklin Celebrini 18, and we hope he has a wonderful career, but three cups and all the other accolades, that's a lot to live up to. So I'm not gonna go and be like, oh yeah, yeah, the full scale Jonathan Toews. No, we're not going there. But the hockey IQ, the quick little hand movements, those little hand movements that make a major effect are so Jonathan Toews. You think of watching like game breakdowns of young Taves and exactly Celebrini's movements on that goal. That little hezzy hey he did right as soon as he picked up the puck. And I really, really liked one part about that goal that people aren't talking about. Nobody's saying anything about the release. It's always, oh,
Oh, is it?
the move, the pickup. But oh wow, he knew where to be. That was a really good release. And not just good, but it looked powerful. Like it rifled off his stick from a very small motion that I want to say he maybe moved like all of a couple inches to make that shot happen.
His shot has been probably his most underrated asset since
Totally.
like before his draft year started. And honestly, James, I kind of think it was entirely just a byproduct of the fact that he was the one after Bedard
Mm,
and he
right.
wasn't Bedard like that. So just because, like it was Connor Bedard got all the praise for how good he was at shooting the puck in his draft year because he scored
And at the
71
World
goals.
Juniors.
Yeah, and yeah, 23 World Juniors points. So Celebrini wasn't going to get the same limelight, but like he can beat you in every single other way and then rifle the puck past you, right? Like he is again, yeah, that Jonathan Taves prophecy is just what I'm so ready to watch this kid grow into because I think he's a rock star and man, this San Jose team, they're building something. I know there's some times where they've been and they will probably continue to be brutal to watch, but pieces are getting in place.
I was laughed out of a room and out of a conversation for saying Mackenzie Blackwood should be considered for an emergency number four goalie if someone goes down for Team Canada. I think everyone who laughed at me needs to apologize.
When did you say that? Like this weekend?
Just in random conversations with people here and there. I don't think you and I had a full conversation about it. I think I just like said his name briefly and we moved on.
Yeah, I mean he's playing well, and he's playing well. The save percentage of the NHL, James, I think we're at like an average save percentage of 901 right now.
Right.
In 2016, it was a 915. Mackenzie Blackwood so far this season has a 911 save percentage. So like it's not a crazy thing to say that, oh yeah, this best on best team that is, it's been very well reported that they're struggling for goaltending.
Yeah.
um, what if we took this guy who's playing well above average by save percentage in the NHL? That's not a crazy thought. Um, I think where you have him pegged is as high up on that Canadian goalie depth chart as I'd have him, but I'm not gonna call you crazy at all for that.
Perfect. Also I've really been impressed with Jake Wallman.
Me too, especially
And
considering like San Jose was paid to take him, which was
yeah.
weird from the outset, sure, but still like
Well, Aiden, that's not actually weird considering you have wanted the Red Wings to make room for Edvinsson. So that's not weird.
totally. But if I'm Edmonton, Vancouver, like again, off the top of my head from being in these markets, sure. But
But you don't
there
want to send him to a team that's any good.
if
Maybe.
you're Detroit in the
Yeah, I guess it
East,
doesn't really
really,
matter
I
so
don't
much,
know.
but
Listen, yeah, I absolutely thought and think Detroit should be, kind of like taking the step into the future with their ice time allocation at times. I saw
which they are
Edvinson,
doing.
yeah, Edvinson and Sider were playing together the other night, and I was a very happy man watching that. I think that was in this San Jose game last night too, actually, that we're talking about this Celebrini goal in. But there's a big difference between needing to trade somebody and then needing to pay somebody to take somebody, right? Like Vancouver had no choice. Mikheyev, nobody was taking that money for anything less than what they gave Chicago to take him. But Jake Wallman was on a reasonable contract that he was probably, fair value for. And Detroit paid San Jose to take him, and he is playing very good hockey, like superb.
Definitely, definitely. Well, Aiden, most of our listeners, if not all of them, okay, maybe not all of them. I want to say maybe you might have one of our listeners being from out of BC. Other than that, I want to say everyone hearing this is from BC. So the thing they're caring most about listening to this podcast is what the hell is going on with JT Miller?
I think you'd be surprised about podcast demographics.
Really?
I do. But JT Miller is, regardless of our podcast demographics, probably a decent place to go next. Um, I will let you take this one, being the local to it.
Okay, so yeah, it's one of those things where at work today I'm talking about this with people because I live in Vancouver and I work in Vancouver. So the news pops onto my phone earlier today saying JT Miller taking an indefinite leave of absence from the Vancouver Canucks. And it is for personal reasons. And then the Canucks say that they will have no further comment at this time. Then it comes out through a couple sources. One of them I saw was Rick Dollywall saying stuff like him just needing a reset or him needing a break. I'm paraphrasing here, but it was along those lines. Um, yeah. Rick Tocchet came out and said that it's completely unrelated to a benching that happened recently. Basically said he's lucky to have him, and this has nothing to do with that. He's the team's emotional leader. And yeah, completely unrelated. And I find the idea that he may need a reset or some time to be interesting, but I don't want anyone to take that and run with it. In this market, we have been wrong about things like this before. JT Miller has kids. He has a wife, family there. Not to mention there could be something to do with extended family. I hate assuming when it comes to this stuff. And I hate thinking that the first fact I read from someone reputable is correct. I'm not calling any of these reputable journalists and entertainers in the local sports media landscape wrong. I'm just saying we don't really know much yet. The Canucks have said they won't be commenting. A lot of people have said they won't be saying anything to respect his privacy. Um, the thing that matters most is that him and his family are okay, right? Because in the end, this is a game and real life happens. Aiden and I are no stranger to being involved or knowing people that have had real life struggles. And when someone is having a real life struggle, we got to respect that. I've had a real life struggle and I hop on this call and Aiden and I go, "Yeah, we're not doing the podcast today. We're just going to sit and chat."
It's happened.
Sometimes you are not game ready. And I think that's a pretty mature decision to be able to go to the organization if that's what happened and say, "Hey, I can't be playing right now. I'm not there." So yeah, I wish him all the best and I wish his family all the best. Aiden?
Yeah, you know what? You took it in the direction that I would have taken it, which was to say that family guy with kids means that his family and his kids are going to be the most important thing to him. So
Yep.
whether whether it's literally just he's in a tough mental space because of hockey and for the good of his family he wants to break, right? Like that could be it, and then all of these guesses about different hypotheticals that could be happening are unnecessary, right?
Yep.
Um, Vancouver, yeah, you said it. The market's been wrong about things before. Um, Generally, I am a like, if you don't want speculation, the remedy to that is disclosure. But in situations in which the explanation is it's a personal reason, that is actually a sufficient
Yep.
explanation to me, right?
That's all I
That's
need to
kind of
hear.
yeah, yeah.
Regardless of whether or not they have a family.
Oh, totally,
Yeah.
totally. Yeah. Yeah, because at the end of the day, your family, like family subjective, right? So
Yeah.
somebody's family can be different looking than somebody else's family, and the validity is the same neither way. Um, yeah, so hopefully sooner than later, they are they by meaning hit the Vancouver Canucks 5 minutes into the third period right now, tied 3-3 with the Rangers. Artur Shilovs has played a bounce back game from the last few he's played, so good for
Oh,
them.
also, one last thing to add. I saw some scumbags on X, the platform formerly known as Twitter, saying just terrible things about what it could be going on in JT Miller's life. Don't be like those people. And you know what? Don't engage with them either. Do not click like, no retweet, none of that. And honestly, the stuff was so vile that I'm not going to repeat any of it.
Yeah, you know what? I didn't see it, but I will tell you just how, like, yeah, you're totally going to be right about that. So, have you hopped on Blue Sky Social yet? This is completely free ad, and I know
What
we're
the
not supposed
hell
to
is
do these.
that?
It's literally like, you know how something like Cap Friendly goes down and then a bunch of alternatives pop up? The death of Twitter has been so foretold, and the infestation of Twitter with like Nazis has been so rampant that
And
it
porn.
is, yeah, it is literally just it is just new Twitter. Um, I have been Blue Sky Social and Threads this week instead of Twitter for the most
Threads is
part.
sick.
I'm trying to move away because I don't need to see like the most violently racist crap every time I open that app, which is like, and like literally today it was a suggested one that was a racist comment towards like a Canadian citizen that's in the public eye about them like again, I'm not being welcome in the country, and it's just like the amount that that's normalized on Twitter is crazy. So I'm very much like as you say that somebody who is hoping that hockey discussion can healthily take place somewhere else.
Totally. Yeah. Threads is cool. I encourage people to go on Threads. It's one of the more friendly social media spaces I've encountered. It's just like people nerding out over the same stuff because it's tailored to your Instagram algorithm.
Yeah, well, and yeah, it's I think the people who want to make it their life mission to cut down others are still on Twitter. So hopefully Threads continues to be a place without those people.
Honestly, I had like a day and a half where I didn't go on any social media other than replying to people in Instagram DMs. That was a pretty cool day and a half. I highly recommend everyone does that here and there. Not to make this like a random lengthy social media discussion that obviously bridges into the mental health issues around Twitter and other social media, but yeah, take a little break. It's pretty cool. Stop and smell the roses. Go swan about. Do some swanning. Have some snacks, swan, have some tea, a beer. I don't know. Whatever floats your boat.
Two major hockey leagues with some league related news.
Which one do you want to take?
Um, I will start by saying that the PWHL, the Professional Women's Hockey League, is doing something very cool. If you are a junior hockey fan in BC, you might have seen the BCHL doing this. I think the BCHL called it their road show, I want to say, in the
I
past
remember that.
little while. Yeah. Um, the PWHL is calling it their Takeover tour. So what they're doing is they're going to a decent little list of destinations, actually. I'll pull it up here. Climate Pledge Arena in Seattle, Rogers Arena in Vancouver, Ball Arena in Denver, the Videotron Center in Quebec City, KeyBank Center in Buffalo, Lenovo Center in Raleigh, that's Carolina, Caesars Arena in Detroit, and Enterprise Center in St. Louis. So all of these destinations are going to host a different PWHL regular season games. Um, uh, Quote from PWHL Senior Vice President of Business Ops, Amy Shear. Bringing PWHL games to fans across both countries is a natural next step as we continue building our audience. This is market testing, guys. So if you live in any of these places, I implore you to go to these games. Seriously, like that's about as much as I can say is buy a ticket and show up unless they're out of your budget because this especially again, I'm living in Red Deer, but me and James are Vancouver people. The Vancouver stop is right after I return here from Christmas, so I'm gonna miss it.
When
But
is it?
when Wednesday, January 8th is the Montreal at Toronto in Vancouver. Um, I hope that
Oh, the
Vancouver,
week
I
they
hope
pull in.
Yes, I hope that Vancouver, I hope that Calgary, I hope that everybody that has these games show up enough and have enough interest that the PWHL feels confident that they can expand to all these places because news, that's what this is about, guys. This is literally about what cities, what markets can sustain this kind of team in their market. I would be all over a Vancouver PWHL team. I love it. It's great. It creates so much in hockey. It creates so much for young women's hockey in that area because those professional women's teams are completely dedicated to growing the game with their female supporters. So a PWHL team coming to a city will just absolutely blow up the female hockey in that city. It will increase it by so much, James. You said it. I said Montreal and you said Marie-Philippe Poulin, right? Just like that. Um,
Yeah, she's
having
the
a
goat.
She is, yeah, totally. And having a PWHL team and subsequently a superstar with the name recognition like that in your city to have, young fans, both male and female, looking up to is huge. So I'm all over this. I'll be pumping the tires of this until it starts January 5th. The regular season, James, starts think this week. I think this week the preseason goes. When does the regular season start? I don't know if we've got a I think I know preseason starts this week. I think not this Saturday, next Saturday. So a week and a half ish from now, we'll get the regular season underway. So check out the PWHL, support the women's league because this has been something that at the end of the day has been lacking. This is a long time and a long overdue thing for North America to have a professional women's hockey league, especially considering that the two best countries internationally for this sport are Canada and the US. So go to those games, support the league. I'm very, very, very much looking forward to this season starting and those games in the different markets because I think that's going to be super cool.
Definitely. Everything you said, again, I'm fully in support as well. One last piece of NHL news before we move on. There was a lot of speculation over the past week, specifically on the weekend, that there could be an NHL salary cap bump of up to 9 million. That is ridiculous. And naturally, when I see that, I think, oh wow, teams are gonna have some wiggle room. This is it's gonna get pretty heavy. NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman has come out and said, no, 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 don't get too excited. Exactly, quote unquote. I don't know where the report came from. The numbers that were being thrown around were not accurate, and any change would require an agreement between us, the league, and the Players Association in terms of how it's computed. And we haven't had those discussions. That's the important part. That discussion has not occurred whatsoever. And he says, so somebody, I think, floated something on a slow news day. Uh,
Yeah,
yeah, you know what? I 85% believe him.
yeah, me too.
I think
Me
there
too.
have been discussions and I think there are plans in place. You know what? 9 million is pretty crazy.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. If we're talking 5 million, seems legit. 6? Okay. 7? Really pushing the envelope here. I already don't believe 8. So I certainly don't believe 9. I think we probably will get a $4 to $6 million bump.
That would be good. Listen, at the end of the day, the salary cap, the the propaganda is that the salary cap creates parity. The salary cap contributes to parity. Parity is created in the NHL by maintaining the integrity of the draft, in my opinion. The salary cap exists, quiet part out loud, because the owners want to be able to control how much money they're having to pay their players. That is
Totally.
the start and end of it. So we are approaching a collective bargaining agreement. The fact that if you look around the major four sports leagues in North America, the player salaries of NHL players specifically have grown at the lowest rate out of all of them because of the
Yep.
salary cap, right? Again, it's the owners being able to control the wages of their employees, which Call that what you will. So hopefully, again, the reports that show the salary cap being raised the most substantially are the best to fans and the best to players and the best to everybody that isn't writing those checks. So fingers crossed, but yeah, it's gonna we're gonna hear a lot about this because this is gonna be a core issue at the next CBA without a doubt. The fact that NHL players are just paid so much less than the high level athletes of other sports.
And just to throw a random tidbit of information in, um, before the salary cap was introduced, you saw Doug Waite getting paid $8.5 million a season. Now, he was a really good player, but he wasn't a full-blown superstar. So you could say there was a time when we were trending towards NHL players making similar money.
Yeah, yeah. And it exists in the other sports, right? And those other organizations, those other sports teams remain functioning and profitable, which the NHL will have you believe is an impossibility if the players are fairly paid. But that is the that is the world of that's the world of worker versus employer negotiations. Which welcome to real life, everybody. It happens. It does really happen everywhere.
Hey, sometimes the union wins.
Yeah,
It does
yeah.
happen sometimes.
It happens far less than it should, but
All right.
from
Well,
time to
that
time.
is all we have for hockey news this week. Aiden, do you have any trivia for me?
No, no, I brought the this or that last time, so I was gonna see what you came up with for this one.
Well, Aiden, I think it's time we move towards some trivia because it ain't the Great Canadian Hockey Podcast without a couple great games to play. And I have a game for you. It's just another this or that. Today we have a couple players' sophomore seasons, and I'm going to get you to pick between the two of them. And you know what? They are quite comparable. I am pretty much giving you a mirror image as I did with a couple other players in their respective seasons before. We talked a lot last pod and ended up naming the pod after Mikko Rantanen. So first things first is his sophomore season, where in 81 games he puts up 84 points. That's 29 goals and 55 assists, even plus minus 35 points on the power play, playing just shy of 19 minutes a night. Um, the guy went from looking pretty good and promising to being downright dynamic and making one of the best duos in the league with Nathan MacKinnon as McKinnon burst out of his shell and ended up a completely dominant superstar. Player number two, Jason Robertson. Calder Trophy runner-up in his first season with 45 points in 51 games, follows it up with 79 points in 74 games. That's 41 goals and 38 assists. He was a plus 16, put up 21 power play points, playing a little less than a minute less than Rantanen. He was playing about 50 seconds less per game. And the shots were fairly similar. Um, and honestly, I remember having a similar reaction to both of them, going, "Oh yeah, yeah, he looks pretty good in his rookie year. I'm curious to see how we can build on it." And then they don't just build on it. They build a freaking skyscraper on it. They start making a whole city center because these guys pretty much go from promising young player to superstar in the span of 12 months. What can you tell me? Where are you going to go? And why are you making your decision?
I feel like the biggest why I'm making my decision is truly and just honestly a solid amount of recency bias being an element in this. I just remember watching so much of that Jason Robertson season, and the big thing that stands out about Robertson from that year to me was the fact that like he scores 41 goals, 79 points. Those 41 goals came from a position where Robertson was playing with, different players. He spent a lot of time with Rupe Hintz and Joe Pavelski, but the style of play that Robertson played on that line, like he wasn't just the finisher, right? Like it's easy to look at 41 goals on a line like that and say that he was the guy at the side of the net being able to tap them in, right? Like at the end of the day, I'm not discounting what Zach Hyman did last year, but much in the same way that Hyman had 54 goals last season. But Robertson wasn't that at all. Like he was just all over the place, and 41 goals and 79 points came from the fact that he dominated the game instead of like was good at a particular thing or two. Now, I don't remember too much of that Mikko Rantanen season. Again, what I do remember more than anything else is McKinnon. Like that's what
Yeah,
stands out in my head from that year to me is the Nathan McKinnon breakout. Um, so maybe because it's more recent and I remember it better, but the strength of that Robertson season to me was the fact that those numbers didn't come from him like finding a particular niche on this line and then exploiting it. He was just all around the best player on the ice a lot, and the production came just from that.
definitely. This time I am going to go a little bit of a different route. It's going to be a this or that again, but I'm going with two players who I found excited me fairly similarly in the World Junior Hockey Championship.
Okay. Are we going to pick like a World Junior tournament or like an NHL season from them?
Oh, I'm going with their World Junior tournaments,
Okay, nice.
which happen to be the same tournament for the same team.
Okay. Okay, interesting.
Yep. I am giving you Max Domi and Anthony Duclair in the 2015 World Juniors. Duclair put up 8 points in 7 games, and it immediately catapulted him from quality NHL prospect who is showing some flashes to, wow, are we ever excited about this guy? Ended up being called the Duke of Broadway in New York, but before being traded to the Coyotes in a Keith Yandle deal, I believe.
That's Duclair.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And then Max Domi, who drafted by the Coyotes and ended up putting up 10 points in 7 games in that tournament. And I will never get the picture out of my head where when that goal is scored and he sticks his tongue out and points. I remember watching this on like a not very high quality TV in my bedroom. And I had somewhere that I had to go, and I kept delaying it. I kept texting and postponing because man, I was having a good time. I remember leaving the tournament feeling the same way about both of these players. And I want to say you felt similar. Where are you going? Who are you taking? One game to win it all, and why?
Okay, it's that Max Domi and James Brad Marchand was what was extremely good and his contribution on the ice was and during the play obviously was huge in the 2011 Cup final against Vancouver for Boston. He was a rookie. But the way Brad Marchand tormented the opposition in that series was how Max Domi tormented the opposition in
Mm.
that whole tournament. Um, New Year's Eve, Canada USA. He like just it's hard to again. This is a hockey game that is almost 10 years old now, so it's hard to it's hard to remember who he was in different altercations with, but the guy was all over the place. He was in every single scrum after the whistle. He was physical. He was dominant. He scored 2 goals in that game, and Canada beat the States, and that was, I think, their only win over the U.S. for like a decent chunk of time. Like I think it took them 5 years to beat them again at that tournament. Um, and then in the gold medal game, him and Pavel Buchnevich are like almost fighting off the face-off. And then he puts a beautiful pass on the tape of Duclair like right after the draw for Duclair to score like 23 seconds into that game. And don't get me wrong, Duclair was awesome, but just for the fact that Domi like became that team's emotional leader and became like such a nuisance to play against both during and then not during, his actual involvement with the puck on his stick. It was fun to watch. He was, yeah, he was a He was something special in that tournament, and that whole team was special. They went 7-0, and they were just crazy good.
Aiden, I've got one more interesting one for you. We're gonna keep the this or that going. They've been quick and easy. I'm not going players this time. I'm going teams.
Hmm.
And the theme is teams that lost in the Cup finals. I'm going to give you actually kind of the same era. I'm going to give you the 2015 Tampa Bay Lightning that kind of birthed the triplets line and saw Jonathan Drouin look very interesting, I believe. And you saw Vasilevsky hop in the Cup Finals. You saw what felt like the page turning while so many players were in their prime, but they just ran into the end of the dynasty, Chicago Blackhawks, and you know what? They couldn't do it. You have to choose between them and the 2016 San Jose Sharks, which was kind of the culmination of, I want to say, 10 years of the Sharks being a disgustingly competitive team. A team that had NHL players and teams scared to go into San Jose and think that, okay, we just need to survive the first 10 minutes and then maybe we have a chance. The Sharks were never not dominant in that 10-year stretch. And with Brent Burns, Joe Thornton, a ridiculous Logan Couture, Martin Jones playing the best he played in his career in between the crease, and a handful of other wily vets and key contributors. They unfortunately weren't able to win, losing in 6 games against the Pittsburgh Penguins in the first of two back-to-back Penguins Cups. Which of these two teams are you taking to win it all, and why?
This one's a little bit more difficult. Um, my gut wants to say Tampa.
Interesting. Do you have a why?
I'm struggling to justify it over the San Jose team because of how good that team was defensively, right? Like
Right.
the Brent Burns and Mark Edward Vlasic, like that pair was so dominant. Um,
Well, the
it's tough.
interesting thing with
It's
that
tough.
Tampa team, they were led in points by Tyler Johnson with 23 points in 26 games. Next up, Kucherov with 22 points. Killorn with 18, Stamkos with 18, Palat with 16. Like they had depth, but their best players weren't really their best players yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. And that's maybe where it's coming from for me is just I remember little baby Kucherov and I'm putting that next to the best Logan Couture ever was, right? Like so that might be part of it for me is I'm just remembering those guys as kids and I'm putting those kids next to very very experienced veterans in my head as I'm comparing it to 2016. Um I remember thinking that Tampa Bay felt way more in that series in 2015 than San Jose felt in 2016. That was the other
Interesting.
thing I was going to say.
Okay.
Because if I'm not mistaken, San Jose was down, I think, 2 buzz and 3-1. And when you're down 2-0 and 3-1, that feels like a series that just is far away from you. Where I think Tampa had managed to tie the series and had a lead in it before game 5 for sure because I
Right.
think they lost game 5 and 6 to Chicago. Um, yeah, I'll say Tampa, but it's not it is more because of how deep that team was. I think I think that's going to be it for me because I think you're right that you have the established guys on that team like Stamkos was established, Hedman was established, but the breakout of Palat, Kucherov, and Johnson, and then that kind of carrying Tampa forward. Um, that's it's because San Jose fell off after that, right? And they made the conference final in 2019, but that was that was as close as they ever were. So the fact that, it was kind of the beginning is maybe where I'm leaning Tampa because it's just, it's a it's a start of a group that then went on to win two cups, which you can't say about San Jose. So they're razor thin on paper. That would have been a good series to watch.
I think I would have taken that Sharks team, honestly.
The way Couture was playing is hard to match. Like it's
And Burns.
Burns was yeah, yeah.
Another interesting part of it is San Jose had to get through a conference final with the St. Louis Blues, who were very, very physical. Like that was not a team that cut you any breaks. And then they would batter you all up and down the ice, and then Fabry or Tarasenko would come score some ridiculous clutch goal.
Well, and you know what? Correct me if I'm wrong. 2015 Tampa, that was the series with the New York Rangers, right?
Um, yes, yes, it
Okay,
was.
the way that triplets line dissected Henrik Lundqvist might be why they're winning for me because they were just like Tyler Johnson, I think, had a 4 goal game against him at one point in that series. Like, I remember Kucherov scoring in overtime in one of the games, so that might actually be just the fondness of the way I'm remembering that series might be another thing that's pushing them to be my answer there.
I'm pretty sure that was the series that made the Rangers realize that their blue line didn't have the wheels it needed for today's NHL.
Yeah, that is very true.
Yeah. Yeah. All
Yeah,
right. Well, that's all I've got for games for you. Aiden, are you gonna bring me some games next week?
yeah, I will.
Because admittedly, I came up with two and a half of those on the spot.
Solid.
All right, well, that's all we have for that portion of our pod. Let's close it out with movies. Aiden, have you watched any movies this week?
The answer is yes, but I don't think it's anything new because
That's
Caitlin wanted
okay.
to start the Christmas movies. We watched Elf. Is Elf part of your yearly rotation?
I'll be honest, I'm damn sick of Elf.
Yeah, you know what? This was the first or second time where I was like, yeah, this doesn't need to be every year because it was for a long time and it was like a necessity.
Did you also watch it in elementary school every last day before Christmas break?
It happened. I don't know if every single one it
I
happened
think I
in.
maybe missed 2 of my 8 years in elementary school watching Elf before. And I want to say that was probably just kindergarten and grade one.
So that might have been where you got sick of it before me.
Yeah, I
But
never want to watch it again. I'll be
yeah.
honest.
Yeah. No, today it was like, you know what? This is getting old.
You know what? Throw if you guys are gonna do Christmas movies, throw on Christmas with the Cranks next.
You know what? It's funny that Christmas with the Cranks is my Elf to you, where for some reason I just remember watching it so much as a child, and I'm sick of it. And that might have been
I
like a particular class thing, or like maybe my school just had it on VHS or something. But like I feel like I've watched that 100 times, and I don't want to watch that anymore.
To me, Tim Allen is Christmas
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
because of those Santa Claus movies.
Yeah, he's in those, which got more and more absurd as they went on too, which
Oh
was,
yeah, and like I don't even want to know what happens in the TV show The Santa Clauses.
oh yeah, no, that news to me that exists.
Yeah, apparently it came out in 2022. I will tell you right now, I'm never watching that. That's
Is
not happening.
Tim Allen in that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh
Oh
yeah.
man.
I don't know where they found him. I haven't seen him in a long time.
Yeah. He would definitely look like uh unsettlingly old, I think.
Yeah. That would make me feel uncomfortable because he was never young in our lifetimes. Like I was watching Home Improvement with my grandpa when I was young. That show's a banger. That show is awesome. But he was an aging suburban dad in that show. So yeah, no. No, no, I think I'd like to leave him in that state forever.
Did you
I don't.
watch all of the Santa Claus movies?
Oh yeah, I've watched 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah. Because I
There's not
think
a
it was
four, is there?
no, there's not. I remember the third one with Martin Short being the one where I thought they lost it, and it was like, okay, this was a like an abomination level.
I think there's a chance me and my grandma went and saw that in theaters because of how much her and I loved watching the first and second one.
Yeah, I don't remember disliking the second one at all. I do remember the first one being clearly the best one.
Well, Aiden, I don't have a traditional movie for you today, as you know.
Yeah.
Um, Before we recorded the pod, I made Aiden watch two music videos that play more like short films. They are songs made by country singer Zach Bryan, and the music video for Oak Island stars Casey Affleck, and it is hauntingly beautiful, I find. It's such typical Casey Affleck where it's like he's just like a working class guy, like dealing with some stuff and pissed off about some personal stuff, but he plays it so well. Like this guy is so good, and even in a 4.5 minute format,
That's
like
what I was gonna say is the ability to shine in a 4.5 minute, like largely dialogue free, right? Like
you
you
don't hear
hear
him say
him
a word.
at the beginning, he like has a phone call that you tune into
Oh,
for maybe like
yeah,
10 seconds, but that's it. Otherwise, it's just the song, right?
yeah.
Which, yeah.
But the way the song is sung, it's like it's from his perspective worrying about his little brother.
Hmm.
Because the one thing I'll say is I'm not a country guy at all, but the Zach Bryan guy's storytelling ability, like very, very, very nice. Very nice. And like I storytelling is what has drawn me into so many genres of music. Like I fell in love with rap music listening to Biggie's posthumous album Life After Death because everything is just like a story, start to finish. And it's beautiful. But then there was one other Zach Bryan music video I made you watch, and that one was called Nine Ball, and it's starring Matthew McConaughey as a father who is taking his kid to the bar and using his kid to hustle people in pool. Like he taught his kid to be just a killer at the pool table. And he's betting on him, and the kid grows up alongside this whole situation, and he's watching it happen, and he's realizing what winning these games makes his father like. And at the end of the video, he puts it in the wrong hole. Like he okay, that sounds wrong. The son puts the the ball into the wrong pocket.
He lost. Like, I
On Well,
think
no, he didn't lose. If you think
he
about it, if you look at it, what he did was because if you listen to the lyrics in the song, he's not just betting on him winning. He's betting on exactly which pocket he's going to get it into. And he misses the pocket right in front of him that it's supposed to go to, hits a harder shot into a completely different corner. And his dad sees it, played by Matthew McConaughey, sees it and realizes it right there. And you watch a huge bar fight ensue. And then, Aiden, I gotta ask, at the end, you're expecting the son grown up to walk out with Matthew McConaughey, but you watch him walk out with the young child version that he walked into the bar with originally. What'd you think of that?
it was good. It's a full circle thing, right? It's
Yeah,
a at the end of the day, your your family's who you got. Like
yeah.
that's really it. Overall, very, very cool short films to accompany these songs. I'm not a country music guy at all, so honestly, the most surprising part was the fact that the music was as good as it was.
I know. That's how I feel too. And this is why I agreed to take a very expensive ticket that was given to me to go see Zach Bryan play in Vancouver tomorrow. And so I don't know. I'm kind of excited. I've seen a lot of country shows, but I've also only ever seen that like really annoying, twangy pop country with no real life to it other than, wow, we're having fun.
Drinking beer in our
Yeah. And
trucks.
I like drinking beer. I like trucks. I like a lot of things that are in country music. But you know what? The thing that bothers me the most is like how poser country can be. I live in Vancouver. I have been to country bars where none of these people have ever been camping. They've never built a fire, let alone roasted anything on top of it. They've never found a bunch of sticks and taken a tailgate off and used that as a beer pong table. Okay? They've never swam in a lake when the sun is completely down and you have no lights or even a fire. All you've got is that moonlight. I am from a small town. I've done these things. And I'm not saying that makes me better than anyone or more country than anyone. I just find it hilarious when people like go off about how country they are and they make it their whole personality, but they've never even like looked into what any of it actually is or means. Like my dad is a hillbilly. I love him dearly, but he's maybe hillbilly is the wrong word. Redneck. My dad's redneck, very redneck. Yeah, definitely not hillbilly. That's I think that's a whole different thing. But yeah, I think this concert is cool and different because it's not really that. It's storytelling about life and all kinds of little things like that. For some reason, it makes me feel nostalgic, even though I can't relate to like any of the stories that are being told. So I find that interesting. But Aiden, unless you have anything else, I think this is it, isn't it?
It is.
Well, thank you all for listening to episode 70. We can't wait to see you in the next one. And without further ado, let's roll that outro. Thanks, guys.